These are the craziest repairs I attempted on PS5s this year. One was infested with cockroaches, and Sony themselves said this PS5 was unfixable. But I don't give up that easily, so let's dig in and see what everyone else missed. This video is sponsored by iFixit, more on them in a minute. I paid $300 for this PS5, and the seller said that the original problem is that it didn't turn on. This letter is directly from the repair center. They say that this PS5 has liquid damage. The seller that I bought it from insisted that nothing's been spilled on it, so it's gonna be interesting to see if there's any liquid damage at all inside this PS5. After the first plate comes off, I do see plenty of dirt and debris down in the fan area. So far, zero signs of liquid. And from the top side, also zero signs of liquid. There is kind of like some marks right here. That can just be from air movement through the console, but we'll know more once we take this plastic mid-frame off. This has been opened before, so we know that either they or the seller did open it at least. No evidence of liquid damage on any of these connectors. Now, the seller did say that this PS5 stopped turning on. That's why they sent it to the repair center. So that was the original problem. Oh, what do we have here? There is definitely some liquid here. So right here, got some sticky liquid. I was all ready to say how Sony was not telling the truth or, you know, kind of exaggerating, but already I do see some liquid there. Let's see if there's more liquid down further inside this thing. Oh, this is actually a little bit hard to get off. These should just pull right up with no problem at all. This one's like stuck in here. Oh, there we go. Got it. Got liquid right here. Liquid all over along here, so that was causing it to stick. And there's a bunch of hair stuck on this fan. I can't tell for sure if that's from the liquid or what, but there's a bunch of it just kind of stuck here. And there's definitely a liquid on here. Sometimes these fans have bearings that can possibly leak a little bit, so that is possible that it's just like some bearing grease, but that's a lot of it around here, so I find that unlikely. And then looking down here, I don't really see much evidence of liquid down there. So now the unfortunate thing is, even if this is all the liquid that's in here, Sony can just say, oh, sorry, there's liquid in it. We're not gonna fix it for you. So even if this is all the liquid in the entire PS5, Sony can still just say, sorry, it's liquid damaged and it's not covered under warranty. Now we just need to remove all these little screws on this metal plate, and then we can have a look at the board itself. Okay, is there any liquid under here? Don't see any on the metal plate, and I don't see any anywhere on the board, initially at least. I think what we need to do is remove this board though, take a look at the liquid metal, and see if there's any liquid on the other side of this board. Okay, now the board's ready to come out. Well, let's have a look at the other side. Okay. There's definitely a little bit of liquid damage over here. Not enough to like actually do any damage to any components, but there's a little bit of rust on the board right here. A little bit more over here. Not really that noticeable, but it is still there. So I don't really see any problems on this board itself, but the power supply might be a different story. Also, let's take a look at this liquid metal real quick. On this PS5, it's interesting, there is no dry spot on the APU, and there is also no dry spot down on the heatsink. I see a lot of PS5s that have a dry spot on the APU and heatsink, and that does seem to cause a problem with overheating, but on this PS5, it looks perfectly fine. So now let's take a look at this power supply. So sometimes I remove the screws for the power supply like this because I don't want to flip this thing over and risk the liquid metal falling out or running down the side or anything like that. So I just lift it up and remove them from the bottom. When they're loose, they just fall right out. Oh yeah, we got some more liquid. There is some liquid under here, but there's definitely liquid down here. That's worrisome because I'm thinking it might have got into the power supply. We got liquid over here, liquid here, liquid here, liquid over here. Liquid's been all down here. Okay, let's get this power supply taken apart. Also, if you're thinking about taking apart a power supply like this, just don't do it. There's large capacitors in here that can store a charge for a very long time, especially in a damaged power supply. So it's just not worth the risk, in my opinion. Let's have a look at the inside. In today's video, I'm using this iFixit Manta driver set. I love this set because it's got bits for almost anything you could ever want to take apart. My second favorite iFixit kit is the iFixit Protect toolkit. The great thing about this kit is it has a very large bit selection along with the driver and the extension tool. As pry tools, a suction cup, anti-static wrist strap, we've got tweezers and more prying tools. One of my favorite things about iFixit as a company is they're not just focused on profit. iFixit is constantly working to make repair more accessible to the average DIYer. On their website, you can buy parts and tools, but they also offer repair guides and also a repair forum for any questions you might have about your repair. They're also constantly fighting for the right to repair. A lot of large companies don't want you to be able to repair your stuff. They just want you to throw it away and buy something new. iFixit is fighting against that to enact right to repair laws. This will make parts and repair information available much more widely to the average person. I'll put links to these toolkits right in the description, along with more information about iFixit and the right to repair. Let's have a look at the inside. It looks like somebody must have been using like a humidifier. There's a lot of this just kind of like residue on it. I don't think that in itself would cause a problem. I don't see any visible signs of problems with liquid on this board. Let's look at the other side. Basically the same thing here. No evidence of any liquid damage on the power supply that I see. Also, just looking at the edges of this power supply, there's definitely liquid on the edges. Like there's some there, and there's some all around right in here. But I don't see anywhere that liquid actually got to the board on the power supply itself. So I think the power supply might have been spared from whatever liquid got in this thing. So I'm gonna get this power supply back together and then we'll plug it in and see if it's putting out 12 volts. Now with the back together and plugged in, let's see what Scotty says. And we've got 12.16 volts. So unless the power supply is just bad under the load, we have a good power supply. Which begs the question, what else is going on with this PS5 that's causing it to not turn on? Let's get it back together just enough to test and see if we can figure this one out. I was pretty sure it was probably like a power supply issue, but clearly that's not the issue. One thing I want to do here is, you see all this liquid metal, most of it's off to the side and not up on the APU itself. So I am going to put a bunch of it back up on the APU. I feel like we might even need to add more here, but let's just try putting it back up and then see how that does. One of the best ways I found to transfer liquid metal is just use the syringe that comes with the liquid metal package and just suck it up, just like I'm doing, and spit it back out where you want it. Now I'm just going to do the same on the APU. Especially this stuff up here near the sponge, we need to get that out of there. Doing no good there. All right, now we'll install the board back in the console, get a few more things hooked up, and try and turn it on. And now I've got it plugged into power. Let's see if it'll power on. Okay, we get a beep, we got a blue light. Let's see if it's gonna turn white. It turns white right away. I don't wanna leave it on for too long because it doesn't have the fan, but it does turn white. That's interesting. Maybe by not powering on, he meant that it didn't show up on the screen. I'm gonna get this thing together the rest of the way and then we'll test it more. It did go back to blue and is pulsing now, but I'm still gonna get it turned off so we can get this fan installed just to make sure it doesn't overheat on us. So top metal plate goes on next. Now all these totally necessary screws. Not gonna film putting all those screws in. And now the disk drive. And the plastic midframe. And now all of these screws. Then we can get the fan in. Just gonna clean this fan just a little bit because I just can't put it back in with it looking this gross. If this thing turns on and actually works, then we can come through and give everything a better cleaning. But for now, I just want to get it together enough that we can test and see if it's going to work. There, that's good enough. This stuff won't be floating around inside the system now. Now we can connect all the cables, install the fan cage, and bottom plate, top plate. Now it's ready to test. Let's see if it turns on, shows a picture on the screen, and then we also need to test the disk drive. Now there's no power. What? So if it's flipped over like this, there's power, and the other way there's not. Let me unplug the power cable. This makes zero sense. Maybe when the HDMI is unplugged, there's power? Just nothing at all. So the only thing I can think of we did is we flipped it over, and so the bottom was on the bottom. Because when I was working on it, this is the orientation it was. And now, since we had it flipped over, it was not powering on. Okay, guess it's time to take it back apart. Not sure how we're gonna figure this one out. Now the other thing is different is I do have the fan and the disk drive plugged in, so now I've unplugged those. I'm gonna plug the PS5 back into power and see if it turns on. Okay, and, oh, so, with the disk drive and the fan unplugged, we've got power, and given the condition of the fan, I'm wondering if maybe that's causing some sort of short inside the fan, which is causing it to not turn on, maybe? I don't know. So let's unplug it again, let's plug the fan in and see if we have power. Okay, and fan is plugged in. Now let's plug the power cable back in, and do we get power? No, we don't. Okay, let's find a replacement fan, plug that in, and see what happens. First, let's unplug this fan again. Let's plug the disk drive back in. That will rule out that as being a problem. Power to the disk drive, power to the PS5. Okay, we need to get a new fan. Let's plug it in and see if it'll turn on. Now with the PS5 turned on, let's see if it is putting power to the fan. I'm guessing it probably is, but let's just double check that. Get one probe on ground, and we have 12.15 volts to the fan. Okay, so the PS5 is putting power to the fan, so let's replace the fan with this known working fan, then we'll see if the PS5 will still power on. Out with the old fan, in with the new fan. But is the fan the only problem with this liquid damaged PS5? Let's find out. And we have blue light. Oh, we've already got something on the screen. I do hear the fan spinning. And there we go. And the disk drive pulls the disk in. Does it spin up? And it spins up, so the disk drive is also working. So a faulty fan seems to be the only problem with this PS5. I need to do a lot of testing off camera just to make sure, but in this case, Sony was right. There actually was liquid damage on the PS5, and the customer who said there was absolutely not was simply wrong. I'm guessing maybe one of his children had something to do with that. $100 is a great deal for a PS5 if I can fix it. A viewer named Brandon contacted me and said that he had a PS5 that had a broken fan connector, and the PS5 would also shut down almost immediately after it started up. He said he'd sell it to me for $100 in hopes that I can make a video out of fixing it. So let's take a look and guess and see if we can figure out what might have happened here. We definitely have a broken fan connector. I'm guessing maybe this PS5 was shutting down quickly after startup, and so the seller or someone that the seller knew took it apart to see if they could fix that problem, and unfortunately broke the fan connector off. So probably the first thing we need to do is to fix this fan connector and then start it up and see if we get it to shut down. But While I'm fixing the fan connector, I'm also going to take a look at the liquid metal. The liquid metal is a very common thing that can cause this problem. So let's take a look at that while we have the motherboard out to fix the fan. Okay, we've got all the thermal paste in where it should be. Some of the first things I think of when a PS5 is shutting off, a lot of times that's caused by overheating. So one of the first things I'm going to look at is the heat sinks. Another thing I'm going to look at is the power supply and see if the power supply ventilation holes are plugged with dirt and hair. And then we're also going to be checking the APU and the liquid metal on it. Feels like, I don't know, this is pretty stuck down, so there we go. Now let's flip this over and have a look at this liquid metal. Okay, actually not too bad of a dry spot. This is actually sort of better than I expected, although I'm not sure there's enough liquid metal on here to make enough contact. There's a good sized blob on the heatsink side, so it could be okay. So the next thing we need to check are the heat sinks and then also the power supply ventilation. Let's see if they're plugged. Oh, not bad at all. These are nice and clean actually. And then the power supply. I don't know if somebody has already cleaned this, but this is just completely clean. So I don't think that's an issue. So what I'm going to do now is just take the motherboard and replace that fan connector. Then we'll get the motherboard installed. I'll add a little bit of liquid metal and make sure it's all spread around nicely. Then we'll put the heatsink back on, get the rest of it together, and then we can test it. A while back I made a video about a PS5 that was ran over that I tried to fix. Unfortunately, I was not able to fix it and I wasn't sure there was going to be too many parts that I could use off of the board, but this is a part that I definitely can use. I'm going to steal this fan connector because the fan connector for the PS5 that I bought for $100 is not there, so I'm going to steal this fan connector off of this board so we can install it onto the $100 PS5 board. How I'm going to do this is heat it from the underside, and then that will melt the solder on all of these little joints over here, and that will remove this from the board safely without damaging anything, you know, if I do it right. Now I'm going to slow down and just go right where I need that heat. There we go, and got it. So what you're going to see me do next is take a little grinding pin and grind away the solder mask on these traces on the board. I'm going to be offsetting the connector just a little bit. The mounting pads have been torn off of the board, so I need to move it over just a little bit to enable me to mount it back onto the board. Once I grind off the solder mask, there are two places that I need to add a little bit of wire to enable me to solder those pins to the pads on the board. The pads have been torn off, the ends of them have been torn off, so I need to replace those ends with some wire, and that wire will sort of lengthen the pads so I can connect the pads to the pins on the connector. Once that's all done, I'll put a little bit of conformal coating on, and that will just protect all of these traces. You can see it just kind of sucking up under the connector, and that's exactly what we want. Now let's get this back installed and we'll get that liquid metal taken care of. I don't remember if I have any more liquid metal in this tube. We don't need a ton more on here. Oh yeah, we got more. I'm gonna rub this around now. Yeah, this dry spot really isn't too bad. Now we're just gonna do the same thing over here. The goal here is just kind of rub off any of this oxidation on here. And this one wasn't too bad either. I do want to add just a little bit more liquid metal. Got to make sure there's the perfect amount on here. Got a little bit on there. There we go. There we go, that's pretty good. Now we can get this thing reassembled and see if it's going to work after all that. Okay, and this conformal coating is getting pretty dry. It's pretty tacky right now, but still not enough to super glue it. So I'm going to put it together still enough to test it, and then I can come back and glue it later. But that is looking pretty good, and it's fairly strong. It definitely has some wiggle to it, but it is still fairly strong for what we had to work with. Here we go. Yep, works great. Okay, and that's together enough to test. Now let's get it plugged in and see if it'll turn on and see if it'll overheat once it is turned on. Okay, let's see if there's power to the disk drive. Yes, there is. Power to the console. Yes. The fan also does start up right away. That's good news. Let's see if we get a signal on the screen. So it did restart. Oh, come on. Good. We almost had it. Okay, it's restarting again. I don't know if that's good or not. Come on. Yes, we've got the PS logo. That's great news. Now I'm just gonna get it set up and we'll see how long it'll last before it overheats, if it does. Hopefully it won't at all, but uh-oh, it just turned off. That's not great news. So we know the fan is working, the fan connector is working. I think what I'm gonna try next is replacing the power supply, because that's something that could easily cause this type of an issue. If it's not the power supply, it's probably something on the board, and I'm not sure that's gonna be something we can fix, but let's try the power supply first. Of course, in order to get to the power supply, we have to take all this stuff back off, including this fan connector. So I'll show you how I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna hold down on the fan connector with my fingernail while I pull up on the part that's supposed to come out. So the part that's connected to the board, I'm gonna hold down with my fingernail, hopefully you can see this, while I wiggle back and forth and pull up on the actual fan connector part that's attached to the fan. That seemed to work fine. Now I'm gonna undo all that stuff I just did so we can get to the power supply. So we can remove the old one and install the, hopefully the working one. I don't actually know. This one is not, I don't remember what this is from or if it even works, so hopefully it does. Now I do still have to put on the Wi-Fi antennas. I'm gonna wait to do that until I get this back together and test and see if that power supply even works. Disk drive has power. Power to the console. Okay, we have power again. That's good news so far. Okay, black screen. Processing. Okay, it's repairing. That's fine. Repairing console storage. Okay. Okay, this is where we got before. And then it turned off right around here. Come on. Still on, that's good. Did we fix this one? There we go. So far it looks great. I'm gonna go through and get this set up, but I think this $100 PS5 is all fixed. The price of a new power supply is about $65, so I paid about $165 for this PS5, and obviously it took a little bit of time for me to fix, but overall I think that was a pretty good deal. I bought this broken PS5 on eBay because I really wanted to save it. Not only does it have both back USB ports that are broken, the disk drive isn't working correctly, but the reason it's in this green packaging is because it used to have live roaches in it. Keywords used to. At least the seller said that it's been cleaned. We'll find out once we get it open. But first, now we can open it up and see if there are still any live insects in it. And so far so good. There's a lot of nasty bug pieces in it, but so far nothing live. So top cover, and that looks pretty disgusting. Oh, the fan's actually, this fan cage is kind of bent. Got a bunch of hair in here. Oh, let's look at the other side and see how bad it is. Oh, wow, look at this. That is so gross. It smells really bad too. You got a bunch of little bug pieces in here. There's also something sticky over here, which is not ideal. This so far looks like the perfect console to send over to Robert on the Restorage channel. I think he's gonna have fun with this one. But first things first, we gotta do the repair on it. The first thing I'm gonna fix is these two HDMI ports, so for that, we have to get down to the board. Also, this has not been taken apart before. The warranty sticker is intact. So this will be the first time this has been apart. Clean my gloves off before I start using my tools. Wouldn't want to ruin my fancy iFixit tools by a bunch of cockroach guts. Okay, and here we go. There's no signs of live roaches so far. I hope it stays that way. I've done a lot of repairs of PS4s that have had live roaches, and it's not fun. Sometimes they even get into your house, which Tronic's wife was definitely not impressed with. Oh, look at this. We've got a Western Digital black SSD. That's a bonus I wasn't expecting. That is so gross. There's even one stuck right there. I've got to make sure and leave that so when Robert gets this to do his cleaning video, he sees that. Oh, that's going to be an entertaining video, at least for me to watch. Always pull up on the white part of these connectors, not on the cream colored part. The cream colored part is attached to the motherboard. And if you pull up on that part and break it off, you'll have to learn how to solder in order to put it back on. Now the fan, oh, we lost that Roach. And that is pretty disgusting. Again, that'll be a good one for the cleaning video. Okay, I need to make sure and keep this guy though, because we need to place him back in there. Be like a little surprise. This is like stuck on here. I think I got all the screws. All the screws are out. Oh, I hope this isn't liquid damage too. Oh, yeah, there's some sort of liquid that got in that somehow, I think. This part is kind of like welded down with some sort of sticky liquid. That's disgusting. This thing is so gross, I can't even explain. I don't even know where to put this. I guess I'll just put it on my floor and vacuum when I'm done. Now the disk drive does need work, but we're gonna worry about that last. Okay, and what are we gonna find under this metal cover? These things sometimes are stuck on here pretty good. Make sure we got all the screws out, yeah. And that's just normal, so you gotta pull on it pretty hard. There we go. Okay. All right. Just, you know, a few loose, dead roaches, no big deal. Some hairballs. Okay, totally expected so far. Okay, here we go. Let's look at the other side. Oh yeah, huge dry spot. That's exactly what I expected. Look how dry that is and how dry this is. So we'll need to deal with that, but let's deal with these USB ports first. Look at all these Roach pieces that came out of there. I'm actually just gonna collect all of these and dump them back in the console when I'm all done. So I wanna make sure Robert gets the full experience when he opens this thing up. So we've got a donor board right here that's got two good USB ports, and these are the bad ones. So I'm gonna first start by removing these ones, and then we'll install these into those places. Now USB ports are kind of interesting and a little bit different than HDMI ports. The pins on the USB ports go all the way through the board, whereas on the HDMI port over here, the pins just stay on the top of the board. So this is going to take plenty of heat, just like HDMI ports, they also take plenty of heat. But we need to make sure that it's got plenty of heat on there, and then these should just fall out. I do need to remove this metal mesh because the heat will totally deform these and make them so they're not even usable. So I've got this area all prepped and ready to go. I did put some Kapton tape over the Ethernet port as it is a lot of plastic and I want to avoid melting it. So I'm gonna keep as much heat as I can over here and try to not put any more heat over here than is needed to remove this USB port. So I'm going to use my hot air soldering station to heat up these ports until the solder melts, and then the ports should just fall out the bottom. This repair looks great. Now let's deal with that liquid metal. Let's clean some of this oxidation off with some isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip. Sometimes it's really hard to really get it to spread around very much until you clean it off a bit. So we're gonna do that first here. Okay, now I'm gonna come in and just rub this around. Sometimes it takes a firm touch to really get the oxidation to rub off. Again, though, I did clean this first, so that really helped. I'm just using this swab that came with the liquid metal package. There's quite a bit of liquid metal around the edges here, so I'm going to use the syringe that comes with a liquid metal package and suck some of that up, just like that. And then we'll put it onto the APU chip right over here. Now we can spread it around a little bit easier. We do need to add some more liquid metal here, so I'm going to grab a new syringe full of that. And I am using conductor knot. I'll leave a link for this in the description. This is the liquid metal that I use and I like. Not sponsored, maybe someday, but not sponsored right now. All right, I'm just going to add a little more onto the APU. Oop, there we go. And then I will rub that around just a little bit to make sure it's even. Oh yeah, that's good. Really good. Now we need to do the same thing right here on the heatsink side. So again, I'm going to clean it up with some isopropyl alcohol. This isn't always needed, but sometimes it helps. Sometimes this oxidation is really stubborn and hard to get off, so I've found that it does help to clean it with IPA first in some instances. Okay, and that looks really good. The liquid metal is spread nice and evenly. All the oxidation is gone. We've got the perfect amount of liquid metal, of course. Now we can get the board reinstalled, and then we can have a look at that disk drive and see what's going on there. There we go. And then the top metal piece can go on after that. And then the disk drive. And this top case piece, including roaches. And we'll just put the fan in just so it has cooling while we're testing it. There we go. Now it's together enough that I can turn it on, see if it turns on, and then test the disk drive. Probably what's going on with the disk drive is there's a bunch of dead cockroaches in it, but we'll see. Okay, do we have power to the disk drive? Yes. Let's see if it turns on. It does turn on. All right. Wow, that smells really bad with the fan going. Let's put the disk in. That's going in really slow. Okay. That tells me what I need to know. We need to take this disk drive apart and have a look at the inside. Okay. Now this bottom piece should come off, assuming it's not too stuck on there. Yeah, that is pretty gross and dirty inside. So I want to get these two rollers out, just like that. I'm going to leave this gear up in here so I remember where it goes. It's probably going to fall out. Yeah, that's all right. So now I'm going to clean each one of these. I don't know if this is the only problem with this disk drive, but since it wouldn't even take the disk in, I know it's one of the problems. Probably one of the main problems. Although this has got some pretty crazy grooves on it. I'm not sure if just a cleaning is going to be enough to get this working. I think it might be better to replace these. I'm going to get another pair from a donor disk drive and have a look at those and see if they're any better. Now before I put those in, I'm going to clean this a little bit. I don't want to clean it too much because I want to leave Robert plenty of things to clean, but I don't want to put these new rollers in with it this dirty right in, around where they go, because I can just make them all dirty again. So just for good measure, let's give the laser a bit of a cleaning. There we go. Now we can put this back in here, and hopefully that's all this disk drive needs as far as repair. Oh, that looks so much better. I think that's going to work just fine. Part of me hates putting this thing back together like this because it's so dirty, but also that's going to make such a better video over on the Restorist channel. There we go. Okay. Now this thing back together again. Let's see what happened when you try to put a disc in. Comes on. Oh, it takes it right in. All right, and that spins up and works great. And there we go. We only have one other thing to test, and that's to see if these rear USB ports are working. Let's plug in a controller and see if they work. Now if this works, this light should light up once I plug it in. Let's see if it does. And... oh, okay. There we go. We got a light. And it is working up on the screen. I was a little worried at first, but it looks like everything's fine. If you want to see a video of this entire PS5 getting fully cleaned and brought back to basically new condition, I'll put a link for the Restore-ish video up on your screen now so you can come hang out with Robert and watch this thing get restored to basically brand new. Thanks again to iFixit for sponsoring this video. Go to ifixit.com/TronicsFix. There's also a link right in the description that'll take you right there. Thanks so much for watching today, and I hope you have a good one.